So what they're doing, I mean, this is fraud. This is just exactly what fraudsters do. I'm going to fix the problem. I will fix the problem. But because there isn't enough racism in the United States, because conservatives and Republicans don't believe that way, they had to fabricate their own racism so that they can turn around, raise money on it, ostensibly to fight it. That's why this is such a huge fraud case. It isn't just about that they're saying, that it's the fraud is that they're creating the very problem that they're claiming to solve. They're the ones creating the racism. They're the ones funding the KKK. They're the ones funding the Unite the Right rally. They're the ones that are funding these so-called radicals, but it's all SPLC.
So you have Congresswoman Hageman there from Wyoming talking about, she said there's not enough racism to fund what the Southern Poverty Law Center is trying to do in this country, that they have to stoke it. They have to manifest it. Why? So they can knock it down. It's not really about racism, is it? I think it's possible that it might just be about power and money. Let's talk to our friend Deroy Murdock about it. Nationally syndicated columnist, Project 21 ambassador, and of course a Fox News contributor as well. Deroy, welcome back. Happy Wednesday to you.
Great to talk to you again, Annie.
So the Southern Poverty Law Center thing, there's so many different headlines popping right now in the news that I think that the story is being under-discussed. And I'm very interested in you as somebody who is a black conservative man who's covering the news. When you see that the Southern Poverty Law Center is pouring money into places like the KKK and stoking the hate that they tried to manifest at Charlottesville, I'm banging my head into the wall. I can't imagine what it's like for you to watch all of this come out with this latest indictment.
I guess that explains why my forehead's bleeding from banging into the wall.
Oh, no. Get you an ice pack.
Yeah, ice pack, exactly. Yeah, this story broke, I guess, a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of a big story, and then it was completely knocked off the headlines by the third assassination attempt on President Trump, unfortunately. So people have not been talking about this story quite so much, but it's still in the news, and I'm sure it will come percolate back up as people are brought in and as the prosecution continues. But yeah, this is an absolutely astonishing story. When I heard about this, I thought, you've got to be kidding. This is like something out of an SNL sketch or something like this. You've got the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is kind of the Vatican of anti-racism in this country, and they've been fighting the KKK and the neo-Nazis and so forth for years and years. And now it turns out they're subsidizing those guys, that they're basically providing money to informants and other people in these hate organizations in order for them to go out and do hateful things. And the Southern Poverty Law Center can go out and say, oh, my God, look at that hatred, look at the racism, look at the bias, et cetera. Please give us money so we can go fight these people. This is kind of like the American Lung Association secretly handing out cigarettes on street corners so that people can come in with lung cancer. The American Lung Cancer Society can come in and say, oh, my God, please give us money to help us fight lung cancer, when, in fact, it turns out they're the ones promoting the lung cancer by handing out, unfiltered Camels and Marlboros. I mean, it just cannot – not only can you not make this up, you can't even hallucinate. I mean, if you give me a lot of drugs to come up with some crazy scenario, I would not have come up with this one. And the kind of money that they're giving people is just astonishing. Like, for example, there's one person who's involved in the Unite the Right Hate Fest, which took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, back in August of 2017. This is the big sort of neo-Nazi and Klan gathering that took place in Virginia. And unfortunately, this poor woman named Heather Heyer, she was one of the people out there protesting against the KKK and the neo-Nazis. And a white nationalist by the name of James Alex Field hopped in his car, plowed his Dodge Challenger into a crowd of these people and killed her. She was fatally hit and was dead at age 32. James Alex Field is, I think, in prison for life, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, one of the people involved in this was a secretly paid informant for the Southern Poverty Law Center, who was involved in this, who helped arrange transportation for people to show up at this event, and they paid him $270,000, over $250,000, this guy. There's somebody else who was these people all go by code names for the field sources or the informants. Another is named F9, as in Foxtrot 9, involved in the neo-Nazi organization called the National Alliance. SPLC secretly paid him more than $1 million. You've got another guy who's part of a group called the National Alliance. He's the former chairman, I believe, $140,000. Then you've got my favorite. It's not a ton of money, but the fact this guy got any money is amazing. A group called American Front, which is a Jew-hating skinhead organization. And this guy was convicted in federal court of cross burning. So this is a guy who actually literally burns crosses. He got $19,000 from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Again, you cannot invent this kind of thing.
You know, I'm thinking about what Congresswoman Hageman said there. She said there's not enough racism that exists on its own. This is what the Southern Poverty Law Center has to invest in. We've gone through, I think the last time we talked, I said maybe this kind of really ramped up during the Obama campaign for presidency. And of course, when he won, he talked about hope and change and fundamental transformation of the United States of America. But race was brought to the forefront. I feel as though the highlights of our country as a whole was where we are different. And then we divided people so we could prioritize people. And we had to make sure that the whole process was really to make sure that white people found themselves on the bottom. Instead of just thinking that we're all this like equal, this equal platform where we all stand and then we can, move forward based on the efforts and the abilities that we have. I don't disagree with Congresswoman Hageman when I hear her say there wasn't enough racism. She's not saying there wasn't any. It still exists. What's your assessment right now in 2026 of how much racism exists in our country?
Well, I think the headline of my piece actually points to that very question, or answers that question you're asking. This is in the Daily Signal, and the headline is Southern Poverty Law Center Outrage Offers a Silver Lining. And I think the silver lining here is that the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is based, I believe it's in Montgomery, Alabama, if this country were so deeply bigoted and so completely marinated in racism, it should be very easy for the Southern Poverty Law Center to walk out the door, go across the street around the corner, and find some Klansmen or some neo-Nazis and go fight them and put them out of business or what have you. In fact, racism has become not absent, not completely eliminated, but has become such a, shall we say, a manageable or a minimal influence in this country that they actually have to go and find people and pay them to be racist. Now, that's an awful, terrible thing that they've done, or at least they're accused of having done as part of this massive fraud conspiracy by the Department of Justice, but that they had to go allegedly go these lengths says to me that we really have, if we haven't fully overcome racism, we've overcome to the degree that the Southern Poverty Law Center sees this as a sufficiently rare phenomenon that they need to go out and subsidize it. That's a horrible thing, but in a certain sense, it's a good thing if the Southern Poverty Law Center thinks, there's not enough racism to keep us in business, so we got to go and cook. We got to go concoct some. We got to go cook some up so we can stay relevant and keep our phony baloney jobs, as Governor Lepetomane said in Blazing Saddles. I rather that the SPLC didn't do this, but the fact that they had to go to these lengths says to me, maybe this racism problem they scream about is not as big a deal as they say it is. If they need to go out and actually hand people between $2 and $3 million, by the way, over the last, I think, about 2013 to about 2019, I think it was, to engage in this scheme to keep the racism pots sufficiently stirred so they can go out and say that they ought to remain in business.
Deroy Murdock speaking with us right now, Fox News contributor, Project 21 ambassador, nationally syndicated columnist as well. It's like a piece currently in the Daily Signal, as he just mentioned. What is your advice? I mean, you have to have been thoughtful about this. If there's some sort of Deroy Murdock American utopia for the 250th birthday wish for Deroy, how do we go about moving forward, coming out of kind of shedding the skin, so to speak, of this forced upon, hyper racially sensitive world that we've lived in for the last 20 years? Because I mean, it's not like we shouldn't see color. We can understand that people are walking different lives and experiencing different things, but it should make us stronger, and it certainly hasn't been.
Well, I think we were making real progress before Obama became president. I mean, I don't think we had not gotten completely past racism, but you saw lots of people getting along around the country. You saw lots of interracial couples. You saw a lot of kids of mixed background. I mean, what could be greater integration than people marrying across racial lines and having children of mixed background? I mean, that's about as equal opportunity as it gets. And then once Obama came in, we started saying, okay, well, you're on this side, I'm on the other. Let's divide this. And, it's systemic racism and critical race theory and all this other nonsense. I think the best thing to do is get beyond that. I don't use the term racial color blindness. I think it's really asking too much for people to look at each other, not notice, oh, this person's black, this person's white, this person's Hispanic, this person's of Asian background. I don't really expect people basically cover their eyes and not see anything, but to make it so it's no different than saying, oh, that person's left-handed or right-handed, or that person happens to be 5'10" versus somebody who's 5'8" versus someone who's 6 feet tall. We'll notice the differences in height, and it's not a big difference unless you're hiring people to be basketball players, in which case, yeah, it does kind of make a difference how tall you are. So really we need to get beyond this and go back to where I think we were, about 20 years ago, where we would be aware of people's racial backgrounds, but we wouldn't care about it all that very much. We'll go about our business, and we hire these people, we work with these people, we're friends with these people. In some cases, we marry and have children with these people. And if we can get back to where we were before, where the way we dealt with our racial differences, frankly, I think is we laughed about them. I mentioned Blazing Saddles. You had All in the Family. You had Sanford and Son. We had various comedy programs and so on where we'd make fun of people's racial backgrounds and laugh about it. And if you're laughing about your differences rather than sitting there and walking in eggshells and treating everything like, your racial background is some kind of a, religious experience or something that can't even be discussed because it's so sacred. And if we just laugh about these things and, okay, you're different, and this part of your background's funny, haha, and you laugh at me, I laugh at you, and we somehow get along that way. I think we go back to where we were there and try to live those kinds of lives. I think we'd be a much, much happier society than where we are now, which is, as I say, everybody being, just so tense about this kind of thing.
Okay, last question for you, Deroy, and this is an interesting one. You can just totally take this pitch and not even answer it, but I really want to ask you it. I want to understand, I think, maybe I don't, about why the people fighting the hardest and that are the most upset about racial disparities and marginalized communities and everything, why is it the retired white women that are doing this? Deroy, do you know the answer?
I don't know the answer for that, but I do think you see that a lot of that sort of thing is the older, angry white women. I guess I think JD fans call them the cat ladies, if I'm not mistaken.
We call them the Meemaws.
The Meemaws?
Yeah, the retired ladies with pensions is what my producer called them.
That's very funny. I don't know. Maybe they have a lot of free time and they have nothing else to do. Maybe they feel they can't just have some fun hobby like I don't know, could be playing
gardening,
Scrabble, or gardening, or it could be playing tennis or whatever, vacationing, just a pickleball, photography. Maybe they feel they need to do something quote socially relevant, quote unquote. And maybe as women maybe are a little bit more leaning left than leaning right on balance. Perhaps that's the case. So I can't really tell what it is, but it is interesting. I've noticed that phenomenon. I don't have any real explanation for it.
There really seems
like to see a lot less of it.
There seems to me to be some sort of like permissive hierarchy that white women, college-educated white women, a lot of times they're single, that are older. There seems to be like this permissive hierarchy that they're accepting about themselves over other people that they then kind of utilize in a public display of like self-flagellation. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm 42. I got 4 kids. My youngest is 4 years old. So I still feel very tethered to the young people, even though I have a 16-year-old boy in high school. But I'm just trying to avoid whatever makes people take that turn down the road into their 60s and 70s. I don't want to take that turn. I want to look right past it, speeding past that turn.
I think you want to avoid that turn for sure. And I think one thing that I find really annoying is where you'll find some liberal white person who is insulted on behalf of some person of some ethnic background who's not bothered by anything. Like you saw this with a lot of these Indian names for high school teams, college teams, et cetera. And you've got white liberals saying, "Oh my God, we're so offended," and then they ask people who are Cherokee or Navajo background, whatever, what do you think? I go, I don't care. It's pretty cool. You've got that warrior up there. It's kind of proud of that, and yet the nervous white people get bothered by this sort of thing. I remember a few years ago
the NWPs. I'm writing that down. The nervous white people.
Nervous white people. Yep. There was I think it was maybe Turner Classic Movies on the day that Ted Turner passed away. By the way, and they were showing had a Bugs Bunny marathon. They ran almost every single solitary Bugs Bunny cartoon, because I think Ted Turner at some point took ownership of those, if I'm not mistaken. And but they didn't show one where Bugs Bunny was chasing around this rabbit happening to be black, and the black rabbit goes down a rabbit hole, and in order to get the black rabbit out of the rabbit hole, Bugs Bunny takes a little, like a cup with a couple of dice, and shakes the dice over the rabbit hole. The black rabbit figures there's a gambling going on, and so he emerges from the rabbit hole, and I guess Bugs Bunny knocks him over the head with a stick or something like this. Anyway, the people at I guess it was Turner Classic Movies or whatever didn't include that one because they thought black people might be insulted by that. Now, the only more insulting than that is white people thinking black people are going to be insulted by
the blacks are going to be bothered by this.
Yeah, I don't find the black rabbit offensive. I find offensive the white people who think that I'd be offended by the black rabbit in the cartoon. So maybe we should have a new rule, which is only people of a certain background can be insulted by whatever that insult is supposed to be hurled at those people. If it doesn't bother them, it shouldn't bother anybody else.
Nervous white people. I love that, Deroy. Thank you. Have a great week. Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Okay, Annie. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.